On this fine Tuesday. Maybe in Vietnam it's Wednesday already, but looking forward to seeing what the team at VMNT has to say and answer the questions and get some more information about what's going on. Let's give it a few more minutes. We need the we need Tan and others to join the call, and then we'll get started.
Hey, James, can you see the screen?
Hi, James.
Alrighty.
This is Tan here. How are you?
Hi, Tan. Doing well. Hope everyone else is doing well as well. Excited
Yeah,
on the call.
Good. Yeah. Are we ready to go? Do we have everybody?
Yeah, we're past 6 o'clock, I think, or 7 o'clock, depending on where you're at. I think it's a good time to get started. I was wondering if you'd be able to just give us a bit of an update of what's going on before we dive into the questions.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, I want to send some warm greetings to everyone. It is a pleasure and an honor, actually, to be speaking to you all again. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend this call. Your support means a lot to our team. Also, of course, special thanks to James and Sal for hosting this call. In terms of a brief update, I want to apologize for having this call so late into this quarter. I mean, originally we said that we would do it at the beginning of the quarter, but throughout the summer, I had a very tight, schedule, and also, Steve and I were traveling a lot. It was hard being in different time zones. So, but hopefully we'll be able to give you some good updates today. In terms of where we are, we're focusing on being, pretty much, the first SME-focused neobank in Southeast Asia, with Vietnam being our focal point, starting point, actually. And we're making some good progress on that front. Is obviously it's not very apparent on the PR front. But we are making progress, and hopefully we'll get into the details when we get through the questions here. Also, we are expecting good things to happen in the next 2 quarters here, and I think I cannot disclose too much on exactly what we're working on, But hopefully, when we start going through the question, that you can kind of like connect the dots. So with that, I think we're ready for the questions.
Okay, great, awesome. Thank you, Tan. We'll start with the first question. You kind of touched on it already, but you mentioned that VMNT is entering a new era. Can you describe your vision for this new VMNT and how the vision will be communicated to the public?
Yeah, so as a company, we are entering an era of becoming a digital bank, also known as neobank, but more specifically, being a provider of embedded finance for the SMEs, allowing them access to banking services that meet their day-to-day needs on existing platforms where they are already conducting much of their business. So what is, for those that are not familiar with the term embedded finance, what is it and how does it work? Embedded finance is the integration of financial solutions into a business infrastructure, right? This streamlines access to financial services such as lending or payment processing on an always-on fashion. From an SME's perspective, the idea of embedded finance is that they can access financial services whenever they want without needing to log into another app or website to, for example, make a bank transfer or a few-hour loan application. So most of us already interact with embedded finance technology daily without even realizing it. So let's say, for example, ordering a cup of coffee using the Starbucks app or paying for an Uber ride. While embedded finance has helped deliver simple and more efficient services on the consumer side, which is B2C. On the business side, or B2B, B2B solutions have not been nearly the same level of innovation. So in the near term, what we intend on doing is implementing embedded finance as a tool in addressing the short-term working capital problem and accelerating the growth for the export-reliant SMEs in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Our ultimate goal is to make the credit process, more simple and integrated for SMEs, with the aim of being able to make the loan application process 2 or 3 clicks instead of 20 or 30, and also with value-added services such as financial advisory and management tools. Now, with the ability to determine the credit worthiness of any business on the fly, we can also be what I call the bank of banks, allowing other financial institutions to participate in our overall ecosystem. I think in the long term, that will be the true value of VMNT. So that's the vision I have.
Okay, great. Thank you for filling us in again on what the vision is. Next question. Can Tan and team comment on the White House's latest press release on responsible framework for digital asset development? How is the collaboration with the Vietnam State Bank going regarding licensing and digital currency development?
We haven't had time to review the PR, so we can't really comment on that one. But as always, we are for responsible development of digital assets, and we'll continue to monitor regulatory frameworks by the U.S. government and others. For the second question, we're working with pvcom Bank, not with the State Bank of Vietnam. Any kind of dialogues we have with the State Bank will be through pvcom Bank. However, we anticipate that the guidelines developed by the State Bank of Vietnam will, for digital currency, will be part of the overall digital banking transformation migration strategy for the country in the coming years.
Okay, thank you. Will VMNT apply for a digital banking license in any country soon?
Well, it's part of our future roadmap, right? We plan on being a regional neo-banking platform. So teaming up with additional partner banks in other countries or seeking to get licensed ourselves is part of that strategy. So, yes.
Great. Will VMNT give revenue guidance?
No, not at this time. If you really want to know our business model and how we intend on generating revenue, please refer to our S1 filing for our current and future revenue strategy. with that said, I mean, right now our main focus is on building specific products for a particular SME segment, and with the right customer experience, we think that ultimately is what's going to be driving the revenue driver long term for us.
Great. Can VMNT explain the funded rights they acquired, and if it's still wholly owned eLoan? Is funded rights equivalent to eLoan rights? If VMNT does not own eLoan, are they now a competitor? I think this is in reference to that filing that came out in June.
Yeah, so I would defer to the 8K filings for the acquired rights to fund its assets, right? We don't owe eLoan. eLoan is also in the business of providing financing to SMEs. So just like everybody else, they are also a potential competitor, right? And this is probably one of the reasons why we divest ourselves out of, of eLoan funded.
Okay, so I guess a follow-up question to that is the divestiture from eLoan, they're now a competitor, and you said reference the 8K for the funded rights. Does that include a client list of clients that funded had that VMNT can now potentially have access to and try to reach out to and acquire?
Yeah, it's all disclosed in the 8K filing.
Okay, great. Thank you. What future precautions will VMNT take to properly hire respectable contractors?
We're actually looking at implementing a more rigorous vetting process. We're also looking at bringing in an HR company to help us with this.
Okay, great. Thank you. It was mentioned in the spring you were in talks with Amazon, Microsoft, UnionPay, Finastra, Ripple, and BlackRock. What is the status of these talks?
So I went over this question with our legal, and we really can't discuss anything that has not been disclosed properly to the public at this point, because that would be a violation of Regulation FD, which prohibits a public company from selectively disclosing non-public information to some persons outside the company. So unfortunately, at this time, we cannot discuss those companies.
Okay, understood. Is there an update on when the 3.2 million shares will be removed? Part of that.
Yeah, it's actually being done right now, and we expect to complete it before September 30th.
Okay, great. When the S1 prospectus was submitted, when will the S1 prospectus be submitted? And what is the status of the letter of intent for the M&A that you tweeted about on July 5th? Is it contingent on share price and the S1? So
I think this question is when we'll have our S1 effective. We'll do that when we feel the overall market conditions have improved and aligned with our offering. We are looking at other financing options to fund our operations going forward. As for the LOI, we are working on specific closing terms and conditions. We're basically getting down to term sheets. So we hope that we'll be able to make an announcement soon here. But no, it's not contingent on the S1 being effective.
Okay, got it. Is there any nugget you can share about the M&A that has been tweeted about, or not really?
Not really, but what I can say is that everything we do is about reaching the ultimate goal of getting on NASDAQ. So hopefully that will give you enough of an idea of the type of acquisition target we're going after.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So can you describe how the VMNT leadership actually has SME lending experience? And what about this experience pvcom liked, and how that experience will allow for VMNT to succeed in the future?
You know what? To be honest, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but in terms of how well we understand the space, I helped build the biggest SME P2P lending platform in Vietnam for the last 5 years until we divested ourselves from eLoan. So I certainly understand that space very well. Steve himself managed an SME business on the ground in Vietnam, plus his some from small business banking background. We both have spent more than 20 years working with financial institutions, so I think the experience, speaks for itself there. But I'll let Steve speak for himself about his background.
Okay, great.
Hey, Steve.
Yes. My background. I've spent almost 15 years in banking. Was the finance director at Bank One before it was purchased by J.P. Morgan, and I have worked with several community or small banks in the Bay Area in California, where our focus was on small to medium-sized enterprises, primarily focused on the California and the California export market to Asia in terms of that. So that's my background related to that. And, the experience the pvcom Bank likes from us is that we bring some of the products that you see every day in financing in the U.S. and are introducing those to Vietnam, which they don't see today, such as asset-based lending, receivable financing, and things like that you see every day in the U.S., but is a relatively new product in Asia.
Okay, cool. So I guess kind of back to the second part of the question, or I guess the middle part of the question, talk about what pvcom liked. I know, Tan, you talked about on previous call how there's other players vying for the pvcom business from Singapore. I assume they also had a lot of financial experience. Would you say it was you and Steve's experience that won over pvcom, or was there something inherent about VMNT in general that made them want to work with you guys?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of our deep understanding of the SME space in Vietnam in particular, and also how innovative and creative we are with some of the strategies that we have presented to pvcom Bank. So, I mean, it comes down to who can move fast and who can really understand the space here, right, in Vietnam. So that's why pvcom Bank chose to work with us. Okay,
great. So next question, does the $435,840 cash position on June 30th include the Alpha Sigma Capital investment of $200,000?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. During the 6 months ended June 30th, the company issued 631,530 shares of its common stock for cash of $337,000 and 668,388 shares of its common stock valued at $428,580 to consultants in exchange for professional services. Who are the professional services, and what are they for?
So the consultants that we used during Q1 and Q2 provided a mixture of professional services, and that ranges from legal to accounting to marketing. We're not allowed to disclose who they are.
Okay, thank you. What was the reason/logic behind the sale of 8 million shares of Funded? Did the 6-month sale of 73,781 come from the Funded business?
I think this is kind of related to one of the earlier questions, right? I mean, basically, to gain rise to some assets of Funded, and again, I would, defer to the 8K filing for more details. And no sale has come from Funded.
Okay, great. Why is Voicestep still showing up on the financials? Is there a plan for Voicestep business going forward?
The reason why Voicestep is showing up in our financials is still part of our business, but the short-term plan is just to sustain Voicestep. We basically list out the strategy for Voicestep in our filing, so you can just refer to our 10Q for information on Voicestep too. Okay,
thank you. Is the 321,547 proprietary information intangible asset related to Fundit? What intangible asset does VMNT own?
Again, all the assets are listed in the 8K filing that we are, so please refer to that for the list of assets we acquired from Fundit.
Okay, cool. Why did VMNT choose to sell the remaining $6,100 of digital assets, cryptocurrencies, during the last quarter?
Well, we made a decision to get through the S1, and given what's going on with the cryptocurrency market, we wanted to be clear of anything crypto related to avoid unnecessary comments from the SEC. Plus, it was not considered a substantial holding anyway, so that's the reason why we liquidated our whole the digital assets that we had.
Okay, cool. How long is the pilot anticipated to last for before a full-blown launch? When will the pilot actually be launched?
It actually has been launched, like we mentioned in the PR, and we expect it to last about 6 to 9 months. Reason being is because each loan cycle will be about 3 months, and we want to go through at least 2 cycles, or 3, to fine-tune our platform, and also to reach an acceptable level of operational efficiency before we officially launch it. But I think the most important thing to note here is that we're actually generating revenue and profits from all these loans. So it's not like we're doing it without profitability in mind.
Okay, great. Have there been any participants in the pilot as of yet?
We have a list of yes, participants. Yes. And we going through the DD process on each one of them. This part of it is just to put them through the digital KYC AML process that we have in place with pvcom Bank.
Okay, great. Are these participants finding VMNT on their own, or are they going through pvcom bank branches or through pvcom channels, and then from there they're going into the VMNT system?
It's a combination of, I would say, friendly borrowers. Some we have known through the previously through our involvement with e-loan Fundit, and some from pvcom Bank, which they have not been able to qualify for some of the bigger loans from pvcom Bank. So it's a combination.
Okay, cool.
And that's precisely what we want. We basically want to work with SMEs that have a difficult time getting qualified for a traditional loan from a bank like pvcom Bank, right? That's exactly the space we're going after.
Right, totally. Does VMNT have plans to involve VMNT shareholders in Vietnam to participate in the pilot? Shareholders should be given an opportunity to experience the products she invested into.
Not sure I understand the question. I mean, this program is designed to target exporting SMEs in Vietnam. If one of our shareholders is currently operating such a business, we're happy to engage with them.
Okay, great. For the recent PR announcing the pilot, why was the message not relayed on Twitter by VMNT accounts? I know it was tweeted about, I believe, Sunday night, but that was about 12 days after the actual PR.
Yeah, it was just it's just an oversight, because it was just unfortunate that our social media manager was dealing with health issues at that time. He was actually in a hospital.
Okay, got it.
So it wasn't our part.
Is Gerard Barry still on the team and leading marketing? When can we expect to see more marketing efforts from VMNT? When will the quiet period end?
So yes, Gerard is still part of the team. I'm not sure what marketing efforts you would like to see from VMNT, but going forward, we'll be focusing more on product marketing in order to increase more customer engagement for our digital lending platform. So if you have some suggestions or ideas, please email us, and then we'll take a look at some of the ideas or suggestions.
Okay, great. What is the plan and timeline to uplist to NASDAQ? What strategy will VMNT deploy to reach the listing requirements? Is a reverse split possible?
So first thing first, no, a reverse split has not been discussed, and we definitely want to stay away from that. Originally, we were hoping for by second half of this year, but as you know, I mean, the current macro environment has changed our planning a little bit. We are now targeting either Q1 or Q2 next year, and we touched on this earlier about the acquisition target, and that that's be a big component of that. But at the same time, we also depending on market conditions and how soon we can close the M&A transaction, right? That we talked about earlier. There are several things we're working on as well as part of our uplisting strategy, was obviously I cannot discuss here yet.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Is there I guess the timeline then is pretty unknown, would you say?
But I'm trying to be, I don't want to paint us into a corner here, because every time we say, oh, it's going to be Q2, and then if things happen beyond our control, and then investors are not happy. So I'm trying to be conservative here, James.
Of course, understood. Does the company have any formalized plans to stabilize the stock price, whether that is making deals with market makers to enhance liquidity, or perhaps some other avenue?
Well, like I said earlier, we are focusing on accelerating our fundamentals and to reach our strategic goals of being a neobank and also to qualify for NASDAQ listing. I think if we communicate that effectively to the market, we should see positive reactions. Right? In terms of designing specific plans to boost the performance of our stock, no, we don't have such plans in place.
Okay, got it. Recently, 350,000 shares were added to the outstanding share balance. What are the shares being used for?
That was for an outside service provider. Again, I mean, it's all disclosed in our 10Q, so you can refer to our 10Q there for more information.
Okay. What is the status of the partnership with Alpha Sigma Capital? How will their funds help VMNT?
So our relationship with Alpha Sigma Capital is same as before. They're still a strategic investor and very much aligned with our vision and mission, and have expressed strong desire to help expand our network of capital partners. And as soon as we get going here with our digital lending program in Vietnam, that I think Alpha Sigma Capital probably going to get more active in their participation.
Are they going to, do you think, be active in the participation during the pilot period, or not until after the pilot's closed?
I can't discuss that right now, James.
Okay.
So that's yes. I mean, we've discussed things like that with them. But obviously I can't disclose that yet.
Of course. When can it be expected that communication channels will increase between VMNT and the general public?
I'm not sure what communication channels are being referred to here. Perhaps you can email us with suggestions and ideas.
Okay. So 10, you have mentioned partners many times. Are there other partner banks beyond pvcom that you're working with / in talks with?
Yes, we're always in talks with other potential banking partners in other Southeast Asian countries, and also we always in talks with potential fintech players who are interested in coming into the region or Vietnam in particular as well. So the answer is yes.
So all the is the deal with pvcom, as in Like that's the only banking partner in Vietnam that VMNT will work with? Is there like an exclusivity?
For the time being, we're focusing on launching our products to pvcom bank first, right? I mean that's the main focus.
Gotcha. Okay. Will VMNT take on the small business loan portfolio of pvcom Bank?
Well, it's something we've looked at, but nothing definitive at this point yet.
Okay, gotcha. How will blockchain be utilized in the current plans for the VMNT business model? Will blockchain only be utilized once USDV is launched?
No, not necessarily. I mean, blockchain can be deployed without any kind of connection to cryptocurrency. So, I mean, there have been serious discussions about building out infrastructure to be blockchain based. In terms of launching USDV or anything cryptocurrency related, I mean, nothing will be launched unless there's a fully regulated framework under which we can safely operate as a public company. And as far as we know, there's no such framework today. But we are, discussions with our technology partners about making our infrastructure future-proof and ready to adopt blockchain, with the idea of eventually that everything will become digital, including digital currency or cryptocurrency, right?
Okay, gotcha. What is the current makeup of the VMNT team? Does the team just consist of Tan, Steve, Ernie, Gerard, and Bobby? How will the employee base grow in order to meet the needs of the business?
So our team is also made up of other people not mentioned here. Right? We'll be looking at growing organically and through M&A transactions to support our operations in Southeast Asia. I think if everything goes as planned, you're going to see a dramatic change in number of headcount for us. And I think when we're ready to announce that, you see what I mean.
Do you expect the headcount to grow in the U.S. or will it mainly be in Southeast Asia where this headcount's being added?
It's probably going to be both. It's going to be both, but primarily in Southeast Asia, because that's going to be where we generate revenues, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Hold on real quick, James, just to touch back on that, Tan. With increasing the headcount, will that result also as an increase in overhead directly for the company or the other entity that you would be entering into the M&A with?
Can you repeat that, please?
So for the...
I'm hearing some background noise. It's hard to understand the question. Sorry.
Yep, I'm sorry. With regards to saying that the headcount would increase, would that result in an increase in overhead for the company VMNT directly, or would that result in the overhead coming from the company from the said M&A?
This is actually a financial question, so I'll let Steve address this question.
All right.
Yes, no, most of the headcount is not going to come in as overhead for VMNT. It's going to come in the operating entities as we build out the products and as we move forward in terms of bringing entities on that would fulfill specific roles in our operations, primarily in Southeast Asia. So that's where it would be. It would not be overhead. It would be FTE or headcount related specifically to the operations that we're trying to do.
Okay.
All right, cool. So the next question, Warren way back had mentioned that a VMNT stablecoin could not be deployed due to SEC regulations, or SEC not giving the green light and still unclear regulations in that area. The rails could be monetized. Have these rails started to bring in revenue? If so, when will it show up on the financials?
So again, until there are regulated frameworks, we're not going to deploy anything related to cryptocurrency. So no rails have been deployed, or implemented. Our focus again is to become a business neobank, which we think will be the ultimate business differentiator and also key to long-term shareholder value for VMNT here.
Okay, gotcha. Tan has mentioned on a previous call that he has a unicorn vision for VMNT. Does he still believe this to be the case? What developments of VMNT does he believe will push the valuation to that $1 billion level?
Yes, I do believe, once we have implemented our strategy on being one of the first, if not the first business neobank, focusing on serving a specific, fast-growing customer segment with innovative embedded, financial solutions, I think we'll get there. And that's the overall part of our strategy. I mean, we doing things in steps, right? And you can see that is a long time coming, but you start seeing things coming into play here. I mean, it takes a long time to get things in place when you're dealing with existing banking infrastructure. But I think we're finally getting some traction. And once we have traction, I think we'll start moving on to other milestones, that we've been targeting, like this M&A transaction we're talking about. And hopefully, like I said, we'll be able to share that to the public soon here. But overall, yes, I still strongly believe that, if we can execute and implement our strategy, not just as a neobank serving a specific segment of SMEs, but also the long-term value of our platform, our company, is to create an ecosystem where other financial institutions can come in and participate as well. Because if you really think about it, you don't want to be in a position where you become like the biggest lender in Southeast Asia, because then you become a direct competitor for incumbent banks, traditional banks. We really don't want to be in that space. What we want to be is basically so embedded, integrated into the operation of the SMEs, and it would make it a lot more efficient, a lot of sense for existing banks to go through us to get to the SMEs. And I think truly that's the vision that will get us to be a multi-billion-dollar company.
Okay, great, thank you. In Vietnam, it appears many fintech apps are extensions of super apps. Grab has a fintech component to it. The app is downloaded by many people in Vietnam and is very trusted. Does VMNT believe creating some sort of partnership with a super app, something that utilizes merchants and contractors, will result in more adoption for the VMNT platform? Are there plans to form such a partnership?
Yeah, so a lot of the super apps, like you're referring to, like Grab is one of them. They're more consumer facing, meaning that they're more for B2C applications, right? We're focusing on a different segment, B2B. However, we are in discussions with many partners that need, behind the scenes B2B solutions. Kind of like B2B to C solution. So yes, but we're not going to be obviously visible to a lot of the end users.
Okay, gotcha. What does VMNT believe its competitive advantage to be over a company such as Aspire? Aspire is better capitalized and better known. Why would an SME go to VMNT for a loan and not Aspire?
So I will go first, and I'll let Steve add more to this too. So Aspire is mainly operating in Singapore and Indonesia, with some presence in Vietnam. I'm not sure they have a team in Vietnam, but I'm not sure they're actually offering, services in Vietnam. We are in Vietnam and we are operating behind an actual bank license, whereas they're not. They are even better funded players than Aspire in Vietnam. However, I mean, they all face the same scalability and regulatory challenges by not being a licensed financial institution. On top of that, the thing about dealing with actual businesses, specifically the SMEs, right? No digital profiles or numbers, no matter how accurate they are, can give us full insight into a business. So that's why we have this hybrid approach where we can leverage existing pvcom Bank branches to deploy our digital first strategy. So I think that is a huge competitive advantage that no one else has right now. But I'll let Steve speak more about Aspire and other players and some of the challenges they're facing.
Yeah, this is a good question. Aspire and other competitors are in the market. But again, the biggest challenge they have is the regulatory framework and being able to have a license to lend. You do have to have a specific license in Vietnam to lend. It's extremely expensive to get. You have to put $20 million of capital up in order to get it. And they right now are just not approving licenses like that. And if they do, it's very, very expensive. And so the biggest competitive advantage we have is our ability. One is that we know the market from a business standpoint much better than Aspire does. I know Aspire and I know how they do in Singapore, and they do a great job. But having that local knowledge, but then the key is the partnership with pvcom Bank, in that we essentially are using their banking license to do business, and we're doing it, under a regulatory framework that the state bank understands for allowing these type of businesses to be done. And that's really what sets us apart from them, even though, as the question says, there is, that they are well capitalized and they are well known. They are not, they are having difficulty getting traction in Vietnam.
Yeah, so the licensing, is just one angle. The other angle is that, yes, we launching a digital lending platform, but we gotta take this. We gotta consider a human element. I mean, a lot of the small businesses are very personal to the owners, so we gotta take the humanistic approach to how we launch our product. So I cannot stress enough that pvcom Bank has 120 branches. I mean, imagine this: once we officially launch this, that any SME can walk into a pvcom Bank branch, and they can apply for one of our loans. I mean, that's a huge competitive advantage that a lot of these fintech players, especially from overseas, like Aspire, and there are other names as well, don't have, that we have.
Okay, cool, got it. Next question. In a press release by Nucleus Software partnering with pvcom Bank, Tan was referred to as the CEO of pvcom. The release reads, Tan Tran, CEO of pvcom Bank, said pvcom Bank has been focused on providing gapless banking to its customers, and in line with this theme, we have decided to partner with the best in the fintech industry, Nucleus Software. Can you explain why this is the case? Why were you speaking on behalf of pvcom? Will VMNT work with Nucleus Software?
So we'll talk to them. We know who they are. They're one of the many vendors we talked to. I mean, this is clearly a typo, and I'm clearly not the CEO of pvcom Bank.
Okay, gotcha. So there's no relation then in this fintech approach that pvcom's taking with Nucleus Software and VMNT? Is there any involvement between them or no?
I can't really go into that right now, James. So.
Okay, understood. We have a couple more questions in the chat from people who are interested in what's going on. I'll read some of those out now. So Tan, when will your visibility be increasing? The investor community has been, the investor communication has been very poor, and there's limited information being released to the public. All this is bad for the share price. So just wondering, like, if you will be tweeting more, if there will be any more communication on your part, just so like investors are more aware of what's going on with VMNT and attracted to the company in general.
I mean, so we, during the S1 process, we were under strict, guidance by our legal team to kind of like stay quiet. Plus, the challenge here is that on the legal front is that Twitter is not really considered an official PR channel. Right? Anything that's not put out there through a press release is not considered by the SEC as part of the Regulation Fair Disclosure Act. But I think you can expect us to be a bit more active, not on Twitter or other communication channels, but probably more on the press releases to update the investment community.
Okay, got it. So to increase the fundamentals of the company has to raise money. Obviously, to raise money, it comes with issuing shares. Are you concerned right now with the share price being so low that raising money will result in a lot of dilution? And if so, like, what do you plan to do to combat this and raise the necessary funds to operate the business?
This is part of the reason why we basically kind of like we clear all the comments on the S1 back in June, but given what the market's at and where our stock price is at, we decided to just let it sit for now and for other financing options to get capital into the company to deploy and to expand our operations. The main goal for me and for Steve is how do we get capital in such a way that we don't, dilute existing shareholders out, beyond control. So I think it's going to be a combination of, okay, so let's, how do we make the market more aware of what we're doing? I mean, obviously, given just the macro environment, but at the same time, I think there's lack of awareness of what the VMNT is about. So we're probably going to look to tackle that first part. I mean, to create more awareness about the company, what we're about, why we're so unique, and why we're in the space that no one else is in, and why investors should be looking at VMNT. And we'll do that through more comprehensive channels, proper channels, actually, not just through Twitter or LinkedIn, right? So I think hopefully that will, then everything else, will follow. But the ultimate goal is, not to dilute everybody, beyond the point of there's no going back, or beyond the point of what we need to do, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess my question to that would be, I don't think a lot of people have confidence in the market and where things are going. So I'm not sure when we could expect a turnaround where prices of stocks will begin to appreciate. So with that, is there a sense of urgency in raising the funds? As in, like, say, we're still floating around 17 cents a share some 6 months from now. How will you raise money at that point?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. It's a fair question. I mean, the overall market sentiment is not good. Everybody can agree with that. The good news is we're focusing, on Southeast Asia, which is a lot more unique and is a lot more positive in the investment community than other markets. It's true that a lot of fintech companies are struggling. but then most of those fintech companies are already either here in the U.S. or in more established economies, and they're more focusing on consumer applications. And as you know, consumer fintech applications are mostly just very horizontal applications. I mean, it's just cheaper, faster, easier, but it's not really addressing, it doesn't really bring a lot of value-added services to the space that's already been traditionally underserved, like the SME space. And given that, you factor in the growth potential of Southeast Asia. I mean, you look at deals coming out of Southeast Asia right now is still very positive. So I think we do have good positives, going for us, and we just focus on that. I think we'll be able to raise the capital. We might not be able to do a big one, but we actually don't need a big one, because my goal is not to give away too much too early. So we just do what we need to get going. And I think the idea is if we can generate profits with a small amount of capital, then it's obvious that VMNT can generate tremendous profits with much bigger capital. And that's the idea that we're implementing right now.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I feel like in the neobank space, or just the tech startup space in general, it seems like these companies like to raise money from the venture capitalists, and they're much more frivolous with how it's spent. Not saying that they're interested in or not interested in generating revenues and profits, but it seems like that is not the utmost priority. It's all about growth. Would you say VMNT is going to have a hard time balancing growth with profitability, or will growth trump the need for profitability, or will profitability trump growth in regards to what you're prioritizing as a company?
Yeah, we Steve and I are very conservative, and we're not going to grow at all costs, right? I mean, every deal we do, every customer we take in is going to be profitable. I mean, this is why we have chosen coming out with a lending product as our go-to-market strategy, because it's a given. If you're familiar with banks and how they operate, is a given that 67% of their profits come from lending products. So with us going to market, the first product being out of the market, I mean, is you do the simple math. I mean, is a tremendous, 20% return, 30% return on every dollar we put out there. So that allows us to tap into, debt instruments without touching on equity. So we can consider non-dilutive financial options. So it doesn't have to be just, giving away equity every time we need to raise capital.
I know in a previous call, you and Steve have talked about using capital from these family offices in the region to deploy for the loans to the SMEs as part of the pilot program. Is that how the capital is being deployed at the moment for these SMEs in the pilot?
It's a combination. I mean, if you're familiar with the lending business, there's this practice called first loss, right? So basically, every dollar you put out there, you can leverage up to 3x, 4x. So if we put out $1 million, we can actually essentially lend out up to $4 or $5 million. And you consider, generating 20%, 30% for each dollar you put out there, and you can do the simple math. And then with our operation being based in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, where the average salary for each worker is about $500, right? I mean, I can even go briefly into some simple math, and Steve is going to hate me for this, but think about this. The cost of acquisition for each customer is typically about $1,000, $1,500. If they just borrow from us 4 times a year, think about just a simple math, like each time they borrow $50,000 4 times a year, we generate, an average of 20 to 25% just return on the average. But our cost, our operating margin is pretty low. So that's where the profit's going to come from.
Okay, cool. I don't know the exact details of this, but I saw that Vietnam and the United Kingdom entered into some sort of partnership where the United Kingdom is basically going to help Vietnam develop financial services that are more sophisticated for the 21st century and more modernized. Do you have any comment on that, or any way VMNT will be involved in this process with the digitization of the Vietnamese financial industry?
I don't know too much about that. I haven't read about that report, but Steve, have you? Steve, are you reading that right now?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yeah, no, I've read about that. Basically, what it is that if you guys if you're familiar with the United Kingdom, particularly in London, they've the Financial Services Authority has created a fintech, what they call a fintech sandbox. And what it is it's a regulatory framework that allows them to test new ways of doing banking and financial services within the framework that they already have. And so the agreement between the United Kingdom and Vietnam is to help Vietnam with their fintech sandbox. They have one, but it's not very robust, and it doesn't really give clarity in terms of how would you develop new products within Vietnam. And so this agreement is to primarily help to develop that sandbox, as they say, so that you can have the financial innovation here in Vietnam. I mean, the biggest blocker to financial innovation in Vietnam is the regulatory framework, which causes a lot of problems. So, for instance, in Vietnam, you can't do anything unless it's explicitly stated in the law that you can do it. And if there is something that's, and if there is a gray area or something is not mentioned in the law, technically you can't do it, even though that's the way that innovation's happening in Vietnam. But it also puts, the company into a gray area, which is not good for investors. So the whole point behind this is to create that sandbox that should help foster financial innovation in the Vietnam market.
Okay, cool. And I guess, it seems like VMNT is a innovative financial platform. So hopefully you guys are part of that in some capacity. Referencing the new website. Go ahead, Dan.
I think the key takeaway here is that obviously is on every investor's mind that how, we're given where the stock price is at, how much equity we have to give away to raise the capital we need to launch the digital banking operations. The reality is that we don't need a lot of capital because we in the lending business, we're about to launch lending products. We know that's going to be profitable, and there are capital partners that will participate in this lending operations with us without any kind of demand for our equity. I mean, basically, they just want to crack the space in Vietnam specifically for the SMEs. So a lot of them, have expressed keen interest to partner with us without even asking to participate in our equity investment whatsoever. So that's why, obviously, we like to see better performance of our stock, but short term, that's something we're going to work on addressing. But long term for the company, the prospects for the business model that we have is very, very promising. It's not heavily depending on the performance of our stock.
Okay, gotcha. So kind of referencing again the website that just came out. On there, you talk about cross-border payments. I know you don't want to talk about Ripple or any crypto or partnerships, things like that, but how are you guys going to do the cross-border payments more cheaply than it's currently being done if it's not on blockchain rails or utilizing a stablecoin or a CBDC or anything like that? Like, how's that actually going to work?
The reality of cross-border payment solutions is, James, doesn't matter the inner working pieces. As soon as it hits the ground, there gotta be a fiat offering. And that's where we have the advantage. And this is the discussion that we're holding with many partners, because they want to work, already, of course, there are, ad hoc, fiat on-ramp and off-ramps for cryptocurrency applications. But, in terms of scalability, some of these players are looking to work with an entity that's either licensed or operating behind a license like us. But to answer your question, how can we be more efficient? We can be very efficient in terms of not just on the fees, but also on the FX as well. And I'll let Steve actually is spending a lot of time developing this, so he can talk more about it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in terms of cross-border payments, we all have heard a lot in terms of how blockchain and how crypto can, facilitate that. Well, that's one way. That's one medium of doing it. There are companies that are facilitating cross-border payments, and they're doing so by having access into the banking systems of different jurisdictions. So as long as you have access into the banking system of different jurisdictions, you can actually aggregate your payments, much like Wise does, that allows you to create a wholesale payment platform that then allows you to move the funds wholesale and net them out against each other, and then use the off rails, or the payment rails, in order to get it into the local system. So that's the key behind the pvcom bank relationship is that if we allow people to maintain an account on our platform, there's an off rail into the Vietnam banking system that gets you around having to potentially do SWIFT if you are on the VMNT platform and, say, for example, accepting payments in the US through the ACH system. And then what we're doing is just book transferring it on our platform. And then if the money needs to come out in Vietnam, it's just coming out through our banking partner. So it all doesn't have to be in terms of a new cryptocurrency or a new type of digital asset to make this happen. There are ways that fintechs are looking at doing this in a more traditional way, where they co-opt the current systems that are in place that allow them to basically do wholesale transactions, for the SMEs or for the customer that's a retail transaction. So those are the ways that we're looking at it now. I mean, crypto and the things that we were talking about with the stablecoin, is one way to do it. And when the regulatory framework is there, we'll definitely look at, look at utilizing that. But in the interim, we're looking at other ways to do the same thing. And we have a couple of products that we're currently developing and putting in place to do just that, to achieve the same objective of lowering costs for international payments.
Okay, cool. Can you provide some insight on what those future products might be? I mean, right now it's the SME lending program for U.S. exporters based in Vietnam. Is there like a number 2 product that you expect to be launched pretty soon within the pilot, or is the pilot only going to be this exporter financing product?
No, for the time being, we just talk about. I've been focused on the short-term financing option for exporting SMEs. The products that under development by Steve just mentioned there, we'll announce those products at a later date.
Okay, is the pilot going to extend to other exporting nations beyond just companies that export to the U.S., or is it all just going to be within the U.S.?
The focus right now in the U.S., but obviously, if they export to other countries like Canada, Australia, the EU, we work with them as well.
Okay, cool. In regards to investor relations, is there a plan to communicate better or bring on a person again, whether that be Harry or Borders or some other entity to lead the investor relations dialogue, or no?
I am not going to discuss that here today.
Okay, gotcha. When it comes to the Vietnamese like GDP growth, I know you like to talk about how the GDP is made up of like 40% SMEs. Do you foresee SMEs growing in Vietnam, or will they be eventually taken over by these larger corporations and just be kind of phased out?
No, the reality is it's not just in Vietnam, but the whole region. And, even here in the U.S. as well, right? So the SME here in the U.S. is still, accounting for a large portion of our overall GDP. So the answer is no. I don't see it, because the reality is if you look at the global supply chains, a lot of this, major players, they depend on some of the smaller players. And, our hope is here, that ultimate goal here is, to by providing short-term financing to some of the exporters, we also eventually get to finance the entire supply chain as well, which in turn will benefit the overall global supply chains. And that's the key, and allow some of the smaller guys to participate in the growth of the economy, the global economy. So no, I don't see some of the big companies, taking over some of the smaller players. They actually need, this smaller, nimble players to be part of the overall supply chain.
Okay, gotcha. In regards to the S1 funding, there was an exclusivity agreement between H.C. Wainwright that we understand was supposed to be the funder for the S1. Have you negotiated away from that agreement of them being the sole funder of the S1? And if you did negotiate away, what are the details of that agreement, having negotiated away from those terms?
So the previous banker that we were engaged with, we're no longer engaged with them. We're now engaged with a different banker that's more aligned and more focused specifically for Southeast Asia, especially in the digital banking space. So that's where we are.
Okay, cool. Trying to think if there's any other questions to see in the chat that should be brought out. I can't really think of anything. Are there any final thoughts, Tan and Steve, you guys would like to share before I see if there's any other questions?
No, I think this call has been very. I hope everybody find the call helpful, and hopefully, the limited information that we're able to share with you, you find it useful. I think it is a lot of people are not happy with the fact that we don't put out a lot of press releases. But I think for the investors that have been with us for a while now, we're not a company that basically that put out press releases every week or every month. We're more focusing on building the operations. I think the downturn in the cryptocurrency space actually delay some of our plans a lot. But the good news is, we came out that intact. We're still here, and we're still focusing on the bigger picture. The overall strategy it has never been about just about the stablecoin. I think the stablecoin was just part of the overall digital banking, digital finance strategy we set out from day one. And at that time, the thinking at that time, going back, 12 months, when we started the stablecoin project, the thinking was that perhaps we can accelerate by coming out with a monetary instrument mechanism that would be easily adopted by many, many people. But obviously, given where we are today, it was obvious that that was never going to take off not from a technical standpoint, but from a regulatory standpoint, and that would have been very detrimental to VMNT as a public entity. We still have the know-how, we have the IP, so we can certainly deploy that at a later time. But I think is not fair for a lot of people to say that we failed to deliver that product. We have that product. We just could not deliver the product. I mean, it's certainly working in an enclosed, environment. But as you can see, that a lot of crypto companies are struggling today dealing with regulatory issues. I really don't think, as stakeholders in VMNT, I don't think you really want us to be in that space right now. But like Steve just said, there are ways to be efficient. At the end of the day, it's about delivering product to specific customer segment in such a way that the overall customer experience is enhanced in such a way that is easier and is cheaper, is faster. And there are ways to do that without utilizing cryptocurrency. And that's what we're focusing on. And obviously, we all can agree that digital transformation is coming. That includes digital currency, digital assets. We'll be ready for that. That's why working closely with some of the players, like Ripple or the State Bank and other fintech players, we take that into consideration as the overall strategy going forward for VMNT. And I think it took us a while to get past the stablecoin delay, and now we do have some headwinds given the macro environment, but we remain focused and we know where we want to go and what we want to be. And I thank all the investors for being patient with us and being very supportive through all this process. And we're committed. The whole team is committed to do whatever it takes to get ourselves on NASDAQ, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in the next few quarters here.
All right, thank you, Tan.
And I have one person here who wants to ask a question. I don't know who it is. It's HG. I'm going to unmute him.
Sal, you there?
Yeah, I don't think it.
I guess before you find that question, Sal, Tan, can you just let us know how Vietnam was and what was the nature of your trip there for all those months, and if you thought it was productive, and if good things are coming out?
It was extremely productive. I mean, being at the ground level, obviously, Steve and I were involved in a lot of operational planning, and you can only do so much through email or phone calls through Zoom. Being at the ground level gave me full appreciation for what I actually, missed out on some of the opportunities by interacting with the SMEs and see where the economy is at compared to 2 years ago. Of course, I get all that information from our partners like pvcom Bank and Steve and other people too. But being there, was an eye-opening experience. And also at the same time, I was not just in Vietnam, but also to other countries in the region as well, fostering potential partnerships with other fintech players and also other neobanks as well. Because the strategy for VMNT going forward is not just to be up and running in Vietnam and to be dominant in Vietnam. Obviously, that's the 2-3 year plan. But going forward, looking at the 5-7 year plan for VMNT is to be more like a regional play. And that means that it's never too early to start, having conversation, talks, and partnerships. But it was a very productive trip.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the questions I can have, unless Sal has any more he wants to include.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, James and Sal. And I wish you a pleasant evening. And thanks for setting up the call again.
All right. Thank you, Tan. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for everyone else who joined.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.